following podcast contains some language that may be offensive to some.
Beyond the Stage with Jimmy K.
Welcome to the pilot episode of Beyond the Stage with Jimmy K. It is my immense pleasure to have the great Mark Berry with us today.
Oh, right.
Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, buddy. Great to be here.
For those that don't know who you are, Mark Berry's got over 50 international gold and platinum record awards. He's worked with the likes of David Bowie, Duran, Billy Idol, Boy George, Yes, Cameo, Kool and the Gang, Joan, Jett, Paul McCartney, Carly Simon, New Edition, Deep Purple, Alisha, Billy Idol, Boy George, and how many hundreds of others?
I was waiting for you to stop there, you know. So
There's a few there, right? It's a nice little green salad of greatness, right?
Yeah. No, it's good. It's been a great career. That's for sure. Mm-hmm.
Take me back to when you were like 16. You know, you have like such a great story how it all began, and I really think it's worth telling.
Well, I think when I was 6, I grew up in the 60s, so there's I literally been through it all. John F. Kennedy assassination, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, Malcolm X, the Detroit riots, the Watts riots, the Vietnam War, which was the catalyst for me.
Yeah, but you didn't produce any of those, right?
No. But every night we'd all go down to the den. Parents, everybody, and who did you watch? You watched Walter Cronkite, who was, what came out of Walter's mouth was gospel.
Right.
Like it was vetted, revetted, and re-vetted before it came out of his mouth.
Right.
So I remember just looking at my mom and dad, just go, Mom, Dad, they're going to grab me without a doubt. So I was 16 in 1970, and so they said, okay, well, what do you want to do? My brother joined the Navy. My older brother David joined the Navy. So he was off in some boat doing monitoring Russian transmissions in the Aleutian Islands.
Right.
So he was like totally safe.
Yeah.
So, and when you turned 18 in America during the war, you had to register for the draft, and it was a draft lottery. So your birthday could have been picked,
Right.
So I said, they said, okay, what do you want to do? I said, well, I like this music thing. And I would always ask my dad, hey, Dad, how come the drums are coming out of the left speaker and the vocals are coming out of the right speaker? And my dad, I don't know, go find out.
Well, was your dad a musician, or you just like to listen to music?
My dad loved jazz, Louis Armstrong,
right.
that type of style jazz. And we, it was, when stereo was just coming up, in the business, and so I'd always listen to these records, and and turn off one side of the speaker and say, "Wow, how did they do that?"
Yeah.
And so I found a school in Manhattan. I grew up in New York, and found a school in Manhattan called the Institute of Audio Research, which I don't think is there anymore. And it was run by two legendary engineers. One was called John Warham, who was an engineer at Vanguard Records, which is where we did our workshops at Vanguard Studios, which is actually where I wound up working for 11 years when I came back from England. And then the other one was Irv Deal, who was a big sonic meister, for sound and designed, compressors and limiters.
Yes.
and stuff like that. So I went to the Institute of Audio Research in Manhattan, went in at night after school, jumped on a train, went into Manhattan, in 64 University Place, right near NYU, by Washington Square Park, and I did schooling, and I did my workshops over at and they taught they taught compression levels on a blackboard. Right? And,
Not the most practical way to do it.
Yeah, but that's the way they did. And then you did, once a month we did a workshop over at Vanguard Studios with John Warham, who wrote the handbook on, audio engineering. And so I did that for 2 years. And then turned May 17th, I turned 18 in 72. I registered for the draft because my dad didn't want a draft dodger in the family.
Right.
And then I did graduated from high school a month later. And then the next day, I was on an airplane. I had $200 in my pocket. I was on an airplane. Yeah, but $200 back then was like a couple of grand, right?
Yeah.
So, and got on an airplane, had a list of studios from my favorite records, Elton John, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, and landed in England and just pounded the pavement.
So did you know anybody there? So where did you stay? Or
nobody. I rented a room from a woman named Mrs. Lyon, and I remember the address, 57 Ridgemount Gardens in Russell Square. And I just rented a room. And she was a very nice old lady and, took care of me, made me breakfast and kind of took me in and, I paid my rent and just pounded the street, literally just pounded the streets. And I wound up at Air Studios. And I said, I'd like to see the studio manager. Air Studios was owned by 4 producers. Air was set up as a studio vehicle for the producers that were salaried producers for other major labels. So, for example, George Martin worked for Parlophone, right? But he was a salaried producer. He didn't get a royalty on the Beatle records.
Yeah.
Right? None of these guys were royalty.
Yeah, no, not back then, right?
No, not back then. They were just, here's a salary. You get $200 a week, whatever. And your job is to find talent, sign it, produce it, and get it out. So that's what they did. And then it was by Ron Burgess. I think he produced all the Petula Clark records. And then there was Ron Burgess, Ron Richards, Peter Burgess, George Martin, and there was one other guy. He did all the Tom Jones records. So these 4 producers ganged together, and they started AIR, Associated Independent Recording. And they had a beautiful, beautiful facility on the top floor of Oxford Circus, which is like a major subway stop. And it's kind of like the Times Square.
Yeah, it's right downtown London, yeah.
Yeah, right down the street is Piccadilly Circus, a short walk, so.
I've been there.
Yeah, so it was a great location. So I went in, I'm Mark Berry, I want a job. They go, well, come back, the studio manager's not here. So I come back the next day, and I'm in the lobby. The receptionist is not there. Out of the studio, one of the studios, Studio B, comes a kid named Nigel Walker. And Nigel was an assistant engineer.
Right.
And I said, hey, I'm from New York. I just want, I'm looking for a job. And he goes, well, the girl's not here, but you're welcome to come in and hang out. So I came in, and the first session that I went in on was John Punter was the engineer. John did all the Roxy Music records and, just a legendary
guy. Right.
Yeah. And there was Bill Price, an engineer, and, Jeff Emmerich was an engineer there. And, so here I am. I'm in the studio, and he was doing a record with a band called, with Alan Clark, who was the lead singer for the Hollies.
Right.
And the backup band, Dee Murray on bass from Elton John's band, and Brinsley Schwartz, the drummer from the rock band Brinsley Schwartz. And here I am. I'm sitting in the studio with all these, long-haired rock musicians. They're all smoking weed, and, I'm just like, holy shit, And then somebody wanted a pack of cigarettes, and I said, okay, I'll get you a pack of cigarettes. I'm going downstairs. And that's what I did. I went downstairs, got him a pack of cigarettes, and if somebody wanted a coffee, I'd say, okay, I'll get you coffee.
Right.
And somebody wanted tea, I'll get you tea, no problem. And that's what I did. And then when the session was over, 3 o'clock in the morning, I came back the next day. And then I came back the next day, the next day. And then Joyce Moore was the studio manager, and we became very good friends. And she said, would you like an assisting job? The clients love you. And I said, sure. She says, I'll give you, 20 quid a week for expenses. And, 20 pounds back then was probably $50 a week, right?
Yeah.
Hanging out and learning from the best, right?
Yeah, and what better way to learn than from that huge heap of talent, right?
Everyone was there. Like any engineer who was an engineer was at Air Studios.
Yeah.
Any producer had the best producers in the business at Air Studios. And then I started ping ponging. I met Sir George and everyone. Bill Price, a legendary engineer, did all the Sex Pistol records, did all the Pretender records, engineered all the Chris Thomas records.
Right.
And they loved me. I was, anything anybody wanted, I was able to get. I just ran downstairs and got it for them. Went upstairs to the kitchen, at the studio and got it for them. And then they started assigning me to sessions. And one of the very first sessions that they assigned me to was the Live and Let Die, Paul McCartney and Wings soundtrack to the James Bond movie.
That's not a bad thing to have as a first assignment, is it?
I'll empty ashtrays all day long, buddy.
Right. How long did you have to do like the emptying the ashtrays and being the runner?
Probably 6 months.
6 months.
Good 6 months.
Yeah.
And but then I had no hands-on training, so I'm over everyone's fucking shoulder. I'm just like, holy shit, this is cool,
Yeah.
What does that do? What does that do? What does that do?
Yeah.
And that's really how you learn. And then
that's how everybody learns.
Yeah. And then how else did you learn? You sat down and you drove the car. And when everyone left at night and you're there alone cleaning up and emptying ashtray, rolling up mic cables, putting the mics away, you get behind the board and you start messing around with things. Like, what does that do? What does that compression? What does that EQ sound like? So I did that, and I worked at Air for. So I did that George Martin session for the Live and Let Die, and then it was like live off the floor, McCartney, Wings, 63-piece orchestra, in the big cavernous Studio A. Which had, which was sand raised because of the main subway terminal downstairs.
Right.
All the trains made noise, so it was like 12 inches of sand to absorb the noise, and so I did that.
And a session like that would be like very different from recording just like a 4-piece band, right? With an orchestra, it's like what better way to learn than. What
better way to learn than to have Jeff Emmerich say, "Hey, Mark, can you run out and move the mic over 3 feet to the left above the first violins?"
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm going, what the hell did he hear? How did he hear? What did he hear that made him want to move that mic 3 feet to the left?
Right.
And that intrigued me about sound. So I did that, and then they put me with a lot of the American clients that were coming through, and they put me with a girl named Carly Simon. And Carly was in London recording the No Secrets album. And she started it at Trident Studios with Robin Jeffrey Cable, a brilliant engineer who recently just passed away. And they were over at Air Studios making, doing vocal overdubs, pianos, guitars, things like that. So they put me a lot with the American clients because I was American and I got along with them and stuff. So they put me with Carly, and I was just basically a runner, setting up mics, stuff like that. And then Robin Cable would go out for a smoke break, and then Richard Perry, the producer, would say, "Hey, sit here," to me. And here I am way in back by the tape recorder, doing a tape op, right? Being a tape operator. Stopping, starting, punching in, da-da-da. And then he says, here, sit here. And so here I am I'm in the driver's seat, sitting next to Richard Perry, who produced all the Harry Nilsson records and stuff. And so, I would do occasional assisting on the record, and that record yielded the single "You're So Vain." And this became legendary, a legendary record because Mick Jagger, people thought they heard Mick Jagger singing in the chorus. And in actuality, one evening, Harry Nilsson was in London, and he was hanging out with Mick Jagger, getting piss drunk. And they stopped by Air Studios to hang out with Richard Perry, because Richard did the Nilsson Schmilsson album, which had the legendary "I Can't Live If Living Is Without You" right song. And so they came by to see it. And actually, Harry was supposed to be the one singing on the record, but Harry passed out in the lobby. And, he actually died from alcoholism, so he had a big, serious problem with alcohol.
So then the question was, anybody left standing that can sing?
Yeah. So I mean, here's Mick, and he's like trashed, right? And so he steps in, and and he delivered that vocal in the chorus, right? And then everyone thought, well, wait a minute, is this song about Mick Jagger? Because we think we hear him in the chorus, right? And then the whole big mystique thing,
of course,
who the song was about. Was it about James Taylor? Was it about Warren Beatty? Was it about Chris Christopherson?
It gives it legs.
Yeah. It gave it great legs, right? So it turned out to be an international smash, and it was the very first record I got my name on.
Fantastic.
So I did that record.
And you were how old at that time?
I was 18. Just turned 18.
That's awesome.
May of 72, I turned 18.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so I did that, and then I continued working at Air as an assistant, and I worked on Electric Light Orchestra. I did a lot of sessions with Sir George, which were classically oriented. Mm-hmm. He produced a chamber choir, a Baroque chamber choir group called the King's Singers, and we would go to different cathedrals around London, and I'd set up the mics and raise them up 20 feet into the cathedral and stereo, and Sir George, the engineer would sit there, with his legs crossed, smoking his pipe, and I'd sit there, and I was just the gopher and a runner, and set the mics up and ran the cables and got the gear back to the studio after the session, and so it was a very well-rounded experience of doing, like we did one session with Stevie Wonder and with Eric Clapton, right? Doing sessions together, just like, hey Eric, Stevie's in town. Do you want to hang out in the studio for a day?
Right,
and they'd hang out in the studio for a day.
Sure. That's what musicians do, right?
Yeah. Stevie Wonder. That those sessions ultimately never got released, but here you are making music with the guy from Cream, who you bought every record and idolized every note, and Stevie Wonder, who that music had a tremendous influence on me as a producer.
For sure.
All the early Motown records, early R&B records, Memphis. Those sounding records had a tremendous influence. So I did this I worked a lot with Chris Thomas, did the Climax Blues Band, tons of, one-off sessions, people just coming in, spending a week doing vocals or doing guitar overdubs and things like that. And then I had immigration problems, right? Because I was basically
so that's what happened. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
then I was wondering why you were heading back to the U.S. when things were not great in Britain.
Yep. I came back, and after 2 years, and here I had this tremendous credit under my belt with Carly Simon, and my name's on the record, and I went, holy shit, this is great. And then I pounded on doors in New York City for.
So the process starts all over again.
But I had some great credits. I had a great resume. I remember sitting in my parents' basement with the typewriter, right, doing my resume, and then giving my resume to my dad at work, Dad, can you run on 50 copies of this for me? Xerox, and So I did that. Got a really cool resume, and I pounded the streets, and I did some assisting, but just freelance. Somebody's going on vacation next week, and you come in, and do this session for at Electric Lady, the record plant.
Right.
Sessions like that. So I did that for about 6 months.
You ever do any live mixing at all?
No. I never got a handle on that ever. And I have so much respect for the guys that do live mixing and whose ear can adjust to different live
quickly,
scenarios.
Yeah.
They're like on a dime, right? Oh yeah, I hear a reflection over here on the right side of the, I'm going, how the hell did you hear that? I thought I had good ears, But these guys were like, these guys are very, very talented, So I did that, did the assisting, and then met a lot of cool people, and then the chief engineer at Vanguard Studios, Bob, forget his last name. He called me, said, "Why don't you come in for an interview? We read your resume, blah blah blah." Came in for an interview, and he loved me, and we got along great. He was basically doing all the classical recording at Vanguard. Vanguard was a great label for, blues, rock, folk, chamber choir stuff, And Vanguard, not many people know this, but was one of the first massively independent labels that they actually had 3 acts at Woodstock as an independent label. They had Country Joe and the Fish, Joan Baez, Buffy St. Marie, Joan Baez, and who did I just mention? Country Joe and the Fish. And so here's this label, that's just this legendary label run by these two Jewish kids, from New York, and I started there in April of '76, and it was an unbelievable experience. I just I started out just doing tape copies, lining up the tape machines because they would license their recording catalog to a record label in Japan. A record label in Germany, a record label in South. So I sat there all day doing tape copies, lining up the tape machine, making sure the tones were proper, because they had to line up the tape machine over in Japan when they were, reproducing them and stuff. So I did that for, 3-4 months. And then at Vanguard Records was on the 3rd floor of 61 West 23rd Street. And the studio was at 208 West 23rd Street. And the studio was the ballroom to the Carteret Hotel, which was a, kind of like a flop house hotel in the 20s and 30s. Mm-hmm. And then it converted into apartments, co-op apartments. And Maynard and Seymour got a hold of the big catering section of it because they needed it for the orchestra work that Seymour did. Seymour handled all the classical, and Maynard handled all the folk, rock, pop, stuff like that. And then I would start doing assisting sessions over at the studio and getting stuff up and running, running up the microphones. And they liked the fact that I had a classical experience with Sir George, and because Seymour did a lot of classical recordings were done over there, and then I started finding my way as an engineer in terms of the dance music scene. So this is figures 76, 77, and the high energy gay dance music scene is exploding in New York, just exploding. Yeah. They found it to be a way to, if you could sell 12-inch records, just as singles.
I think it was initially it was really a New York thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. The underground gay clubs in Manhattan, which were all illegal, but the cops at that time, the cops didn't really care because they went there, they partied, they danced. Nobody overdosed, right? Nobody got stupid, right? And so I started making a lot of these. Tommy Silverman at Tommy Boy Records I became friends with through Eddie O'Loughlin at Next Plateau. And these were like dance labels that were coming up. Mm-hmm. And I met a guy. I was born in Massachusetts and spent my early, childhood years in Massachusetts. And I met another guy from Massachusetts through Tommy Silverman. And that gentleman was Arthur Baker. And Arthur Baker was a producer from Boston. So we kind of hit it off because I was born in Massachusetts and he was from Boston. Yeah. My dad was born in Boston. And we kind of hit it off. And then I started engineering a lot of records for Arthur. and his co-producer / keyboard player John Roby, who was responsible for a lot of the sounds. And I started engineering a lot of the records that were coming out of the South Bronx, Afrika Bambaataa, Soul Sonic Force, Awesome Foursome, records that were starting to really pop in the clubs. And I started amassing this huge discography of just as an engineer and a mixer of mixing these records that would later on become like, these legendary dance records, classic dance records. So I started doing a lot of that at Vanguard as well. So Maynard signed an act in 78 called Pouzet. And basically what I did was it was Alphonse Mouzon, the jazz drummer from the 11th House. And it was Larry Coryell in the 11th House, legendary guitar jazz player. With Mike Mandel on keyboard, this legendary blind keyboard player. Like the musicianship level was off the chart in this band. Yeah. So Alphonse was the drummer.
Great drummer, by the way, yeah.
Phenomenal drummer. So he came to Danny Weiss, who was my boss at Vanguard. He was an A&R guy at Vanguard, and he said, "Oh, I want to do this record." He goes, "Oh, okay, I'll stick you with Mark." Because I did the Live at Montreux record with Larry Coryell and the 11th House. It was a live record recorded in Montreux, Switzerland during the Montreux Jazz Festival. So I mixed that for Vanguard, and it did really, really well. So they kind of started leaving me alone because two things were happening. I was creating a name, and people were coming to the studio to hire me in the studio. So Maynard's going like, "Wow, this is great. It's not costing us anything to have Mark around."
Perfect.
Right? Because people are paying, $90 an hour for the studio back then.
And they're looking for this guy.
Yeah. And they're working with Mark, and, Mark's getting the track record, and track record's getting out there. So at one point, so Danny put me together with Alphonse, and we hit it off. Great. And we made this record called Pouzet. And it was a really cool record in that it was 4 songs, 2 on each side of the vinyl, and the songs ran into one another. Okay. So they were like pre-mixed for the DJ. You didn't have to stop. If you liked track 1, the bass drum would constantly keep going and then back into another song.
Gotcha.
Right? So we did 2 and 2, right? And I did that record in a really unusual way. And they're like all scratching their heads figuring out how I did it, right? So I heard a record that I really liked in the club one night, and I go, "God, I love that bass drum." So I got the record, and I copied the bass drum, and I did a tape loop with the bass drum.
Okay.
And I said, "Alphonse, let's do it this way." And Alphonse is like, "No, I'm a drummer. I can just do drums." I said, "No, this is the sound. This is like such a heavy foot. This will work really well in these clubs." So he saw what I was doing, and that's what we did. We did this bass drum, and he overdubbed the snare, then he overdubbed the hi-hat, and then he overdubbed the crashes, and then he overdubbed the tom-toms, and we constructed this massive drum kit with this humongous bass drum that just kind of sucked people in, right? Yeah. And this was called Pouzet, and the big hit was Boogie With Me and Come On and Do It. And these were like huge records. Huge records. So here is Maynard selling tonnage of records, right? I'm bringing clients into the studio. So we started highlighting all these records on the Billboard Hot 100 that I was doing. So at one point in time, I had 10% of the chart of 100.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
I had 10 records that I either co-produced, I either engineered, or I mixed, right? So I'd highlight these and I'd slide it under Maynard's door. Right? So Maynard would take a look at it and go, "What the fuck is this?" I go, "Maynard, I got 10% of the chart with my name on it. These records have my name on them, man. I want to produce." He goes, No. You're not ready to produce. You're a good engineer. You're a good mixer. Stay doing that. You bring the clients into the studio. You help them pay the bills.
You're making money.
Yeah. You're making money for the company. You're doing great. And quite frankly, it wasn't costing him a dime to have me around because, the clients that I was bringing into the studio outside of Vanguard clients was phenomenal. So then I went over to him and I said, listen, Maynard, this is after, many more records. Because, remember, we would do these records and then the summer would come and then these records would explode in these summer, like Fire Island, the Hampton, in Long Island.
Yeah.
And, these, a whole nother, all these new clubs outside would open up, so these records would really take off and explode. So Maynard so I finally went to him and I said, listen, Maynard, I'm going to leave, man, if I don't, you got to let me produce a record. So he relented and he said, okay, find me a song. Find me a song and find me an artist. So this girl, who was the head of accounting at Vanguard Records, Betty Oshinsky, was also from Brooklyn. And I was from Brooklyn. And I'm talking to her and she said, oh, I want you to hear this girl I found. Every time I go gas up my car, the owner of the gas station, gives me a tape of his daughter, Alisha. Okay. Plays me this little demo. She was in like this little side rock band at the age of 13, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, wow, she can sing. This girl can sing. And I was also working on someone else's recording, and his name was Rick Tarbox. And Rick was a writer. And he wrote this song called All Night Passion. So so I got this hold of the song, right? And I went, wow, this is a great song. So I took the song and I took the artist to Maynard and I said, Maynard, I want to produce this record for Vanguard. And if you don't let me produce it for Vanguard, I'm going to take it to another label. And I'll get a deal. Right? So he goes, okay. And then he cuts me a check for $2,500, slides it across the desk, and said, if you lose this fucking money, it's coming out of your salary. I swear to God. I went gulp. Okay, $2,500 back in the 70s. Oh my God, right?
Yeah.
Actually, this was the early 80s, right? This is happening. So
still
I did
a lot
this
of
record.
money. Yeah.
Still a lot of money, absolutely. And so I did this record. I signed Alisha. She was 15, and we did this record called All Night Passion, and the record exploded, just exploded. In the clubs, on the radio, we had a big dance station in New York City called WKTU.
Right.
And it's just a legendary dance. I mean, if you got on KTU, you were golden, right? So,
right.
Straight onto KTU, straight onto their playlists, right?
Yeah.
So I did that, and then that really launched my production career. And then we went on with Alisha to do Two Turned On, and we did Baby Talk, and I just kept finding great songs for people that I was involved with as a producer. I found, in fact, Baby Talk was a record that and that came out in '86. So I was doing independent mixing, and I was in England, and I was back at Air Studio mixing a record. I think it was for a producer named Nick Tauber. I believe it was called the 1 O'Clock Gang. I was mixing this record. And as I go in the studio, Paul McCartney was there. And I said, hey, Paul, what are you doing? I haven't seen you in years. Thank you very much. And he was doing the Give My Regards to Broadway, or Broad Street soundtrack with McCartney and Wings. So, in the end, I'm in the back. I'm waiting for, everyone's clearing out, and I'm in the studio, and there's like this big stack of records. And I'm looking, what are all these 45s here? And he goes, oh, those are people that hang outside Air Studios, and when they see Paul going in, they hand them their recording that they independently, like handing him a demo, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, Paul just throw him in the corner, right? So I found this song called Baby Talk, and it turned out to be written by a guy named Greg Edwards, and he was an English kid, and it was a reggae song.
Cool.
Originally, it was a reggae song.
Yeah.
I brought it back to New York, and I played it for Alisha, and she goes, it's a reggae song. I go, yeah, but I mean, think about how I produce it, the dance thing, And then so I did it. I did Baby Talk with her, and that became an international smash for Alisha and Vanguard.
So were you getting any points at that time, or
not so much points, but I was getting advances for things that I was involved with, that I was bringing into the studio, and I was paying, and people were paying me independently for engineering and mixing this. So if somebody came to me and mixed the record, I'd say, okay, shoot me $1,000, I'll mix the record, and I'd build them. And I always give, because I controlled the studio, right? So I give them always a break. So if they use $2,000 worth of studio time, I'd say, okay, here, give me $1,000, you know, and that'd be for that's for Vanguard, and you know, and they were happy, right? They were ecstatic, right? Because here's this, you know, all these bills are being paid for, and then some, and it's not costing them a dime to keep the studio,
right?
You know, and it's getting a name, and it's getting a great name
for sure
as a facility. So then I went, and then after Maynard sold the Vanguard group to Lawrence Welk, who had he had a really big music company.
I didn't know that.
Had a big music enterprise that bought a lot of publishing assets from people, and then he got in when he bought Vanguard in the late '80s. They ventured into actually master ownership with labels, and so we did that. And then they had me consult with them about the catalog, because the fourth floor at Vanguard was just the library, right. So here we are at 71 West 23rd Street. Third floor is all the offices, and then fourth floor is just this library of unbelievable recordings. Bob Dylan, you know, hanging out with Joan Baez in the studio at Vanguard, you know, back in the 60s, even before I was...
What happened to all that stuff?
That was absorbed, and that was all part of the purchase, and Welk continues to redistribute and put it out. I believe it's called Concord now, because they bought the Concord Jazz catalog. So it's quite a massive company now in terms of content ownership. They own lots of companies that, you know, you and I wouldn't think twice about, but when you gang them all up together, you know, it's maybe, you know, 50,000 masters.
But there's probably a ton of really cool stuff that's never seen the light of day, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. There's tons and tons of great recordings that they just could never, one, get through, or number two, couldn't get contractual. I mean, that's why Mick Jagger's voice on You're So Vain, everyone knew it was Mick Jagger, but no one saw his name anymore because there were just contractual issues having him sing on somebody else's record.
Yeah.
You know? So in fact, even Paul and Linda McCartney, when they were doing Live and Let Die, they just go for a walk sometimes and come down to Studio B, you know, in Carly's session, sit on the couch, hang out, and Paul said, "Oh, great! Hey, you know, can we sing background?" And the credit is just Paul and Linda backing vocals. Yeah. You know, and that's their credit on the record. So yeah, there were contractual issues to do things like that. You know, so that's when I went.
You mean to say that lawyers get in the way at times?
Oh yeah, definitely. Lawyers get in the way for sure, man. So then I went independent after my Vanguard days, and I really enjoyed it because I was doing so much mixing anyway. I already had a great slate of companies that I was dealing with, you know, from not only the independent labels, you know, like Tommy Boy and Next Plateau with Eddie O'Loughlin and Profile Records with Corey Robbins, but also the majors. And then I started doing contract work. So I do, you know, remixing work for the urban department at Polygram, for example.
So how would you land a gig like that?
Well, I became friends with Jerome Gasper, who was the head of urban A&R in New York at Polygram, and I started mixing for him. He started throwing me these high-profile masters that were 7-inch records, singles, and he said, "Mark, make this for the clubs." And I'd say, okay. And one of the first ones he gave me was Kool and the Gang. So I did Emergency off the Emergency record. And then I did She's Fresh, which was a worldwide smash for them. And then they put me together with Larry Blackman, and he had a band called Cameo. And I did the She's Strange, But I Like It record. And that was a smash. And these were all like just club records. So all I was doing was club music. And I had this huge base of A&R guys that really liked my work. And I did it, and I was fast, I was furious, it came out, and bang, like,
yeah,
okay, when do you want?
No BS, right? So just
no BS, in and out, and I paid for people, and some of them, the A&R guys would get it, but some of the artists wouldn't get it. Like I did this record, Sexomatic, for the Bar Case, and it was, I was re-triggering, resampling, doing overdubs. I was actually, doing my own vocal things on recordings, where it's just like noises and just stuff for the clubs, that the kids loved, right? Because that's what I was, I was making. I wasn't making records for radio. I was making records for the clubs, which crossed over onto radio. Because quite often they come back and say, Mark, this is doing really well. Can you make this 7 minutes, 3 minutes? And I said, sure. I'll just cut it down. So I started doing a lot of that stuff.
And in the process, I'd really, sorry to cut in, but in the process, it actually created huge new markets for a lot of the artists.
Absolutely. You can imagine selling an additional 2 million 12 inches.
Yeah.
And your royalty walk away is $1 because they're selling them for $9.99
right
at retail.
Mm-hmm.
So you sell 2 million 12 inches worldwide. There's another $2 million in the coffers for an artist.
Right.
Because it was additional avenue of promotion and marketing for the record label. Because these stations, they were stations just like KTU. All they played were the 12-inch records.
Mm-hmm.
During the day, they played the 7 inches. But when 7 o'clock hit, it was like, okay, we're going to the disco.
Party time.
They play these, party time. And they'd go to do these dance remixes all night long, So I did a lot of these, a lot of these. And I just started doing for all the major labels, from Columbia to Arista to EMI. I did a lot of records. I did the Talk for EMI, Michael Barrickman. I did David Bowie, Never Let Me Down. And you're sitting with these artists, and you're like, oh my shit, David Bowie, oh my God, what this is incredible, So David, what are you looking for in this? And David was like, I don't know, just do what you do, Mark. Just do what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll do what I do. And that's what I did. I just never really second guessed myself.
Right. And that's probably why they liked it, right? Because you just did something that they hadn't thought of before.
Right. And some of these remixes I did, they were so wild.
Mm-hmm.
They were just crazy. I mean, backwards shit going on. Vocals, Sexomatic. I did this like breathing heavy.
Right.
And I'm playing it for the band, and then he goes, "Who's that breathing on the record?" And I go, "That's me. That's me." And he goes, and I was like, "What the fuck you doing? What'd you do to my record?" Right? So they didn't actually want to put that out, but quite often what they do, they white label it in the UK, right?
Just to see if it's going to go, right?
Yeah. They wouldn't say white label. Here it is, guys. You like this record? They put out, exploded in the clubs, right? And then they bring the record back, and then they put the record out. So that happened a couple of times because the remixes I did were just so like out there, And then I was totally independent, doing a lot of recording. In 1984, I hooked up with my lawyer, Paul Schindler, from a legal firm called Grubin and Dursky and Schindler at the time, and Paul had Madonna and Shakira and all these great artists, and he would put me together with a lot of his clients. So in '85,
networking 101, right?
Yeah. He's getting his retainer just by plugging his other clients into other clients. So.
Yep.
He sent me down to Australia, and I met Michael Gudinski, who ran Mushroom Records, and Mushroom was like the leading independent record label of Australia at the time. And I went down and I did a band called Kids in the Kitchen, and that went, gold and platinum down there. And then I started doing a lot of remixes in the Australian marketplace, and I did Pseudo Echo, which had Funky Town, which was a worldwide smash.
Right.
And then, tons of records in Australia. So I was going down, hanging out for 3 months, coming back to New York, doing some recordings there, going to Australia, going to the UK, really traveling around the world, and just meeting tons and tons of great talented A&R guys, that would have me come in and mix records and produce records. And, by then I had acquired an ear for songs and finding out what songs stick to me as a producer. Mm-hmm. And somebody would say, hey, I've got this girl I want you to produce. And I'd say, okay, great. I got like 4 songs I just picked up from some great writers in the UK. And I think you might want to hear them. And I'd play them for the A&R and say, yeah, let's put these 2 together. And you go in and make the record, Mark. And that's what I did. And then it just continued throughout the 80s.
In a lot of ways, it was a lot easier back then because that's more the way that it worked in those times, where I think today it's not like that at all anymore, is it?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's completely, today's marketplace is digitally driven, number one.
Well, for sure. Yeah.
It's social media driven, number 2. And they want the ball at the 50-yard line.
Yeah.
There's no major label.
I know, but just from I'm talking from a perspective of a producer or an engineer, and then artists, and the way that the connection goes with songs and finding the right production and all that type of stuff. I think it's completely different now.
Completely different. It's all brought to the table now.
Yeah.
From an artist's perspective, they have, this is my vision, this is my thing, and you can't get signed to a major label today unless you have some sort of, like I said, the ball's got to be at the 50-yard line because they got to know where to start in terms of promotion and marketing. So,
and then also a lot of times the major labels don't do anything for the artist. If you're an artist or you represent a festival or event and you need some professional advice, check this out. I'm now offering virtual one-on-one consulting sessions. For artists, ask me anything about your career, about the people that want to represent you, about what to look out for, about the contract somebody wants you to sign, about anything at all career related. For events, about planning issues, about cost overruns, about staffing issues, about implementation, about sponsorships. Ask anything event or festival related. No commitment, no subscription, no contracts, no strings, no risk. Just straight up advice on your terms when you want and need it. Your introductory session via Skype, Zoom, or FaceTime is free. Go to realjimmyk.com for all the details. That's realjimmyk.com. It's very, very different these days because it's interesting. I remember Steve Lukather saying that it used to be that labels recorded or they invested into a catalog of music, where now they just invest into a song, right? Yeah. And that's
it's a singles driven business. Yeah. That's the way it is now. So, our clients come to me today and they, we got 15 songs we want to release. And I go, why? I mean, shit. Yeah. My daughter's 25 years old. She can barely get through songs 1, 2, and 3, let alone 5, 10, and 9, 10, and 11. Right? I mean, come on. Yeah. You can have one song that's got 1 million streams and everything else under 1,000. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look good for the artist.
Yeah. And perception is everything today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's why you can't, back in the early 90s, for example, I did a band in Canada here. I discovered a band on the street in a nightclub called the Gasworks in Toronto. Mm-hmm. And the band was called I Mother Earth.
Great band. Love that band.
Great band. Yeah. And I heard this band and I said, wow, these guys are phenomenal. I had done a record with the Headstones, mm-hmm. right? So I had a bit of a name as a rock producer here in town. I approached the band and their management, said, I want to make a record with you, da-da-da. Let's make some demos. We'll go get a deal. I'm well connected in the A&R community, right? So I go out to Gilmore, where I'm doing all my recording, mm-hmm. Who owns Metalworks Studio. And I said, Gil, you want to partner with me on this? He said, yeah, let's get him in. It's great, da-da-da. So here I am. I don't drink or anything, but in lack of a better word, I stumbled into this bar, right? And I hear this great band, and I went in. I did a 5-song demo, like a very high-end demo, mm-hmm. and I got it down to all of my A&R buddies from, my good friend Michael Alago. He signed Metallica, Motley Crue, White Zombie, Great Ears, and he starts shooting his mouth off around the A&R community. You got to see this band, I'm Other. Got to see this band, I'm Other. I had 11 international A&R people fly into Toronto one evening in November to see this band perform at the Gasworks.
Cool.
All based on a 5-song demo that I produced. They'd be stumbling into a bar. They later received a $2.5 million recording contract
Nice.
from EMI Canada and Capitol Records LA. Had to be a joint venture because obviously EMI Canada didn't have that kind of money, right? So it was a joint venture between both labels, and they got a $1.5 million publishing advance from EMI Music Publishing. Okay, so this is 1991.
Not bad for a bar band.
Not bad for a bar band. 30 years ago, kind of they had this vibe, a Perry Farrell vibe to them.
Well, they were great.
Jane's Addiction.
I saw them. I saw them a couple of times. They were great. I never worked with them, but I saw them a bunch of times, and they were great.
Phenomenal band, and that doesn't exist anymore, Jim. You can't. No one's going to give $3.5 million
yeah.
to a band,
right?
And they haven't sold one record.
Yeah, those days are over.
Because the business today operates on a 4-to-1 multiple.
Right. Yeah.
So if I say, hey, here's my band on Mother Earth, I want $1 million, they're going to say, okay, Mark, no problem. We'll give you $1 million, but could we please see $4 million in receipts over the previous 2 years to ensure that our $1 million is safe in a pipeline of $4 million?
Right.
And that is like hands down the way the business operates today.
Yeah.
No one gives free money. There's no promotion. There's no marketing. You have to bring that to the table.
Yep.
Okay? Get your feet off the coffee table, your hands out from behind your head, wondering what the next hat trick's going to be from a major label, because it's not going to happen.
Right. I agree. I totally agree. Yeah.
I tell clients, I say, hey, how about this concept, guys? How about you jump in a fucking Volkswagen van and you drive across Canada with your gear, okay? All four of you is in the van, okay? And you drive all the way back. How's that for a concept? Oh, no, that's not the way so-and-so did it. But that's the way you pick up people. Otherwise, you want to sit on the internet all day.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's, driving determination is very important. I've always believed that. And I think for artists, they just need to play as much as possible, even though it certainly is getting more and more complicated because the live scene is getting smaller and smaller.
And the live scene, I mean, who knows what the live scene is going to be in 3-4 months?
Right. Yeah, it's very, very difficult.
Just from the pandemic. I mean, it's for me, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm going to wonder who's sitting behind me and just sneezed at me.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah.
So sitting at a basketball game or sitting at a rock concert.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. It's certainly the live industry probably is the one industry that's got hit the hardest and will be one of the very last ones to come back.
Altered forever.
I mean, look at they're looking at some sports now, and they want to finish off seasons with like no people in the stands, and I think the hockey fans are going to be happy just to watch some games that aren't 15 years old. But it's not the same, and for the players, it's not the same. They want to perform because hockey's has a big part of rock and roll in it, and well as every other sport. And for musicians, it's the same thing. I mean, you see a fair amount of I've noticed a fair amount of people that are doing Facebook live casts and like all that type of stuff. Yeah. Just so they can still play and connect with people, because that's really an important part of what every artist does. But it's certainly
it's not the experience that you and I grew up with.
No, for sure. Yeah. It's and back then, I mean, it was a certain amount of rawness that was there that I still like to this day, right?
Sure.
I mean, there's something about that run as we're walking into a building, and I was never a big fan of the in-ear monitors when people started switching to in-ear monitors, because on stage there's just that live feel isn't there, right? You got a couple of side fills, but it is not the same.
No, definitely not the same. There's no crowd surfing. Yeah. There's no. I don't know how it's going to survive. Live Nation just borrowed, $250 million just to keep the lights on.
For sure.
I mean, I don't know how it's going to, because, Live Nation is a worldwide entertainment conglomerate. And, Live Nation bought, Epic Rights, Del Ferrano's company. Like the whole merchandising thing is over.
I mean,
how do you do that impulse buy when you're leaving that concert? Right. I went to go see this band called 21 Pilots, right?
Yeah.
And I thought it was a great show, phenomenal show. Kids loved it, packed house. And when I was leaving, I couldn't get out of the ACC because it was like 20 deep trying to buy $90 hoodies,
right.
and CDs and hats and underwear and scarves and. And I go, holy God, these guys are making more money on the merch than they are playing live.
Yeah, I remember working with the Moffats, which some people have never heard of before.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah,
I remember.
The Moffats were a set of triplets and another brother, and they wrote their own stuff and they played all their own stuff. But they were like they were young, like late teens. But they were like really, really popular, and when I worked with them, I really cranked up the merch, where we ended up doing autograph sessions for everybody in the audience in the lobby, and then I just built like the cattle chutes, and then got people through, and everybody had to go by a merch table. And they wouldn't sign anything unless you bought something at the table.
And merch, as well as I do, it's an impulse buy.
Yeah,
right?
and they ended up making more money on the merch than they were getting for playing the shows and the percentages, right? Yeah. So
I just don't know how it's going to survive.
You know what? I think it's going to come back, but you have to get to that point, and I think one thing that a lot of people forget is. All the technicians, like all the roadies, the sound engineers, and all those guys. What do? They the major artists. They can sit on their laurels for a while, but the small artists and then all the technicians. Yeah, it's tough, and it's going to be a long time coming back. But I think by 2021, I think people are just so excited to go see a live show again. So the moment that anything happens, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's playing, and people just gonna go out and support it.
It's just heartbreaking to see, the Budweiser stage, to be empty the whole friggin' summer. It's like, oh my God, the money being lost.
Yeah.
The jobs.
People never think about who's all connected to that type of stuff.
Absolutely.
And there's so many people connected when there is a live show. And I mean, I was in the live industry for well over 30 years, and there's so many people affected. It's bad. But, we have to get through it, and I'm sure we're going to come out on the other side, but it's going to take a little while.
Right. So that's for sure.
Anyway,
that's for sure.
Back to your story. You why did you make that move to Toronto?
Okay, so Toronto came about. It goes back to my lawyer plugging me into a client, and his client was the management company for Platinum Blonde, and they were with Artie and Dursky. His name is Tony, and they were with Artie and Dursky, who was Grubman and Dursky and Schindler law firm, and I came up to make a solo record, 2 records. I came up to work with a kid named Paris Black. He was from signed to a Montreal label called Isba. So I was making that record, and that was around 88. And then Paul put me together with Tony Sabdaris from Platinum Blonde's management, and I did a solo record with Kenny McLean. And the solo record...
Crazy Kenny.
Crazy Kenny. He was a wild, wild guy. And but we made a great record, and it won a Juno, and was very successful for Kenny. And Kenny was that's actually how Kenny would do background vocals on a lot of the recordings, because Kenny would come in and he'd sing every part. Okay, do a third above the melody. Okay, do a fifth. Do a fifth below the melody. And then bang, outside I had this choir standing in front of me, right? It's like, my God, this kid's great. And he played guitar and bass, and so he was a great guy. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, and
too many demons, unfortunately, like
too many demons.
Yeah.
So so I did that, and then I met someone else, and then I met someone else, and then I met someone else, and then I found I Mother Earth, and then I met Randy Lennox over at MCA Records, and Cam Carpenter, and at MCA, and they had me do this band called the Headstones, and I did their first 2 records, which both went multi-platinum.
Yeah.
And then I just continued. I did some records with Lee Aaron, and all these great records that I was doing internationally had already come out here, and met with Attic Records, and did the Lee Aaron stuff, and I just continued making records.
Yeah, and
once
you, especially in Canada and Toronto, it's a very small scene, really.
Yeah,
and everybody knows everybody, so to multiply there is pretty easy.
Yeah, so it spread really easy. Yeah. I met a lot of people. I was working at Metalworks pretty much exclusively, so I met a lot of people. They, check out Mark, he can mix your record.
Yeah.
And,
so how did this all come with you and in the insertion of music into TV and film? Because that's like a big thing for you today. Yeah. But like how did that get started for you, and what did you see? What was the vision?
So the vision was that I was doing a lot of independent recording for artists. Kind of like, imagine, making 10 I Mother Earth records.
Right.
Okay. But they're all not as successful as I Mother Earth. So here you are doing a record for 20, 25 grand, all in, maybe 30, depending on how long it's going to take in the studio. And you hand the record back to the artist and you say, okay, I'll see you later. Right?
Yeah.
And I go on to the next record, right? Because I'm a producer and I'm engineering and I'm mixing other people's product. And I go on to the next record. And then the band comes back to me 6 months later, a year later, and they go, nothing's going on, nothing's happening with the record, So I said, well, why don't I help you get it out? I mean, I got a name. I could certainly go get a distribution deal, and that's what I did. I went and got a distribution deal, and I started putting out the very records that I was producing, right, under a distribution. It was great. The clients paid me to produce. I got them a distribution deal. They own their masters. They own their copyrights. And then I started getting approached because of the record label, Attack Media, and for putting music into film and television, working on like America's Most Wanted, doing a lot of MTV programming. Right. I got the MTV programming through Paul.
Right, but they came to you. It was not something that you had like, that's, is that kind of the way that came about? No,
because the key to the television programming was that, the TV budgets, they don't have a lot of money for music. So basically what they had was they would come to clients that own their masters and own their copyrights.
Right.
And you get what's called one-stop clearance, right? Because traditionally the split is, if I put something in a movie or a TV show and they pay me $1,000, $500 goes to the master owner. Okay, so if the band's the master owner, they pay for it, they get the $500.
Right.
The other part goes to, the copyright holder. So if the band wrote it, they get the other $500.
Right.
Right? So it's kind of look at it like this. So if Dolly Parton, let's say, sings a Willie Nelson song, I'd have to go to RCA Records and pay them the $500, right? Because they paid for the master and they own it. Right? And she's probably recouping money that they've given her over the years for videos and
so she's not seeing anything. Yeah.
Well, she's seeing it goes back against her account, so she now owes $500 less on the account, right?
Yeah.
And then then I wouldn't even have to go to Dolly to clear the copyright because Willie Nelson wrote the copyright. So I'd have to go get a sync license from Willie because under copyright law, as you know, anytime you put audio against a visual format, you need some sort of a license. Otherwise, people can put music behind, pornography or Donald Trump ad or whatever, right? Or a cigarette ad, whatever. So that worked out great for me and my clients because I was working with MTV. I did a blanket license with them at the time, which meant that, Mark, whatever you got, if it's one-stop clearance, get it to us. We'll use it. We'll give the band credit. We're not going to pay you any money up front.
Right.
All right. But you know what? You'll get your SoCan. Okay. You'll get your public performance, which is great. I mean, you put a song in Jersey Shore. Hey, that was played on MTV Malaysia, MTV Germany, MTV Japan, MTV South Africa, over and over and over and over and over. And the writer sees the benefit of that in terms of performance revenue. Right. So it worked out great for the clients that own their masters and their copyrights.
Right.
And that's really how I got into the film. And then I started working on major motion pictures. 10% of a movie's budget is music. So if they're shooting a $30 million movie, which is a moderate budget for a film these days, they're going to spend $3 million on music. And that $3 million, they're going to pay for an orchestra. They're going to go to Prague or Czechoslovakia, or one of the Eastern European bloc countries because it's non-union and it's very inexpensive. And they're going to hire, these, 100-piece orchestra. Right. And they're going to do these epic soundtracks. Yeah. And then they're going to come to, out of that $3 million, after they paid that, they're going to then go get some very high-end copyrights. They're going to maybe put a Guns N' Roses song in it. Hey, maybe a Stevie Wonder song, maybe an old Motown copyright. These are songs that are traditionally, we're looking at $200, $300 for a master and sync to put it in. Right. So my daughter hates going to the movies with me because I'd always nudge her and I'd say, hey honey, that song, that's a $400,000 insertion. Easy. Daddy, shut up. I'm trying to watch the movie. Right? So you have these, very high-end copyrights that they pay dearly for, right? And then they come to companies like mine, where my clients own their masters, they own the copyrights. I can clear it in 10 minutes, right? And get it into the movie, and that's what they love. They want stuff that they can clear independently very quickly, which is why the independent sector in television exploded. And all these bands were breaking out of television because they were getting into these shows. Dawson's Creek. I did multiple insertions for Dawson's Creek. Yeah. They paid $1,500 for a song, for master and sync. Right. Some people go, oh, that's too cheap. I want more money than that. But hey, you know what? Dawson's Creek, it's a syndicated show all over the world. Yeah. It's not only cable, but it's network. Yeah. Okay. So what doesn't wind up on network goes to cable. So you're making two sources of revenue here. Yeah, for sure. And then I started working on major motion pictures, like Urban Legend and Coach Carter and, all these great projects. And the TV sector really exploded for us as well. Yeah. Great. And now you've got... sorry. So, and it also just, you put a few shekels in a band's pocket. For sure. Yeah. And to this day, hey, I put a song in a movie 12 years ago. One song, one movie. I was a co-publishing partner. Okay? God's honest truth, strike me down. I just got a check for $2,500. Nice. On a 12-year-old movie, I'm a co-publishing partner, which means I get 25% of the copyright revenue. Right. The total copyright. Right. Right? And I just got a check for $2,500. Yeah, nice. Thank you, syndication. Yeah. Thank you, cable. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, it certainly all adds up, and today it's all about finding different revenue streams because. Absolutely. Absolutely. I know it's touring and merchandise, but look what happens, right? Right now, there's no touring and merchandise, so if there's any other revenue coming in, that's obviously going to be appreciated, right? That's right, man. Who's not going to take, hey, I put a song in a movie 4 weeks ago with a $60,000 insertion.
Nice.
For master and sync.
Mm-hmm.
U.S. funds, that's like almost $100,000 Canadian.
Yeah. Yeah.
For one song, one movie,
yeah.
And it also creates value not only for the masters, but for the publishing assets. So if you do go and want $1 million advance for the publishing assets, great. You can show $4 million
right.
of receipts because that's what you got to show to create value.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Great. So one of the current projects you have right now is this guy from Quebec called McNichol.
McNichol.
What's the story on Mr. McNichol? Stefan McNichol.
Mr. McNichol. Stefan McNichol is I got referred to through a very dear friend of mine, Pierre Paradis. And Pierre Paradis is a Montreal-based manager.
Right.
And I produced, he used to manage a band called Voivod, a Montreal legendary.
Mm-hmm. I'm familiar with Voivod. Yeah,
legendary band. And I did the Outer Limits album for Voivod, which was not a really commercially successful record, but very critically acclaimed.
Right.
And we did one song that was 17 minutes long, and it was a really cool record to do. I did it in Los Angeles at the record plant, and hanging out with Seal and Prince,
right.
At the record plant. We'd all hang out in the common eating area. So it was a great experience. So I've stayed in touch with with Pia over the years, and I can't stress enough that everything that I'm doing today is a result of the network that I've achieved over 40 plus years in the business.
For sure.
And maintaining those relationships in good standing.
Absolutely.
And trying to help out, doing a freebie when I can, and just helping them out.
Yeah.
And Pierre said, "Hey, I got this kid. I know you're trying to set up a management company. I got this kid McNichol, and I think you should take a listen to him." And I did, and I thought, God, the kid's a great writer. Kid can write a song, right? And that's my background, right? When you're hanging out with Sir George and McCartney and Carly, you come from a song background, a song-driven background, And so we met. We produced. We met. He did his own production. I hooked him up with a couple of people to do some mixing, and bang, we got this record. And it's a great recording. We manage him.
Okay.
We're getting the record out, creating Spotify activity. We're getting a playlist, getting the Spotify playlist system in place.
Great.
Getting it up and running. I'm quite sure we're going to do, because he owns his masters and owns his copyright.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do a lot of insertions for film and TV.
Great.
For him. So.
Well, why don't we listen to the single here right now? Put it on.
Okay,
here.
absolutely.
So this is McNichol, and the song is called Electric Sun.
Gazing at the stars, they don't really seem that far. Reaching out, you could almost grab them. Even if we're worlds apart, we all live through the heart. If one of us bleeds, all of us are hurting. Take a leap, have some faith. I guess it's up to us to save each other. Save each other. I know that it's gonna come. I'm gonna ride the electric sun. I know that it's gonna come. I'm gonna ride the electric sun. Sun has got to shine for everyone. Imagine where we'd be if we were trying. We're walking on the earth, but we're filling it up with dust. Storms of fire, rivers over sun. I know that it's gonna go. I'm gonna ride the electric sun.
All right, so that was McNichol, the new single "Electric Sun."
Yep.
And Mr. Barry is managing Mr. McNichol, and looking forward to insertions and a whole bunch of other good stuff.
Yeah. We just did a deal with MTV for the McNichol catalog. We just did a deal with a company called Mood Media, which is a company that supplies in-store music to 1.5 million retail outlets worldwide. Right. So if you walk into a Versace clothing store in Milan, Italy, whatever, and they're playing music, that's going to be McNichol.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a great. And they get paid. All that revenue flows back through SoCan.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's very it's great for artists like McNichol. We also did a deal with a company called Touch Tunes, which is a digital jukebox service to over 250,000 restaurants and bars across North America. So McNichol can now be played on these digital jukeboxes. It's just giving access. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all.
Providing
letting
access.
people. Yeah. Letting people know that number one, he's alive, he exists. And you play the music. So that's where we're at with McNichol right now.
Great. Let me ask you this, and then this is kind of goes away from the whole story a little bit, but there's a couple of questions I wanted to just pop by you because I find them interesting. I think people can learn something from it as well. And for example, if you could change one thing about the music industry, what would that be? From the music industry the way that it is today?
Access, without a doubt. Immediate access to an infrastructure that enables an act to get their music out into various divisions of income generation for their masters and their copyrights.
Okay.
Right? It could be Spotify playlist, it could be a song in a movie, a TV show, a video game, an advertisement, could be a license deal to China, could be a license deal to Japan, a license deal to South Africa. Anywhere you can generate revenue through one source, I think is going to be a great asset. We're working on something now at AMG that we hope can facilitate that. But look at Facebook. If we had a Facebook for music, right? The one where everybody went, they had all their little categories of music, and and if you wanted to service your music to whomever, and bang, an icon pops up, $9.99. Get it out to 1,000 music supervisors right now. They need something for Jersey Shore. Click, and it automatically goes out.
Right.
And that music supervisor for Jersey Shore has immediate access to your masters and copyrights.
Yeah, that would be a great system.
It's because a lot of these people, they're making these records and they're not doing anything with them. They think let me get them a DistroKid.
A record really in the old sense, without all this distribution, is really just like a business card for someone to buy a concert ticket and your merch.
Right, exactly.
Right? And you need to get beyond that point where it's just that.
Right.
Right. I mean, I've worked with artists before that, and I said, like, look, don't ever look at your CD as like a money making machine if you don't distribute it properly, right?
Absolutely.
If you're just selling it out of the trunk of your car, it's it's just getting people to the shows.
Right, but it's also putting that CD when they're leaving next to a T-shirt.
Right.
Right, because a lot of this is impulse buying, right? So it's like,
absolutely.
Oh yeah, this is a great show. Let's grab the CD. Yeah. Hey, what? $14.99 for a T-shirt? Great. Hey, you make them in China for $2.
Right.
It's like, come on.
One of the greatest things I made money off for artists was just an 8x10, and you can get those printed for like 2 cents a piece.
Yeah.
And you sell them for $5.
And you sign them, right?
You sign them. Right, so you sign them. After the show, you sit. You go out and you have like a little merch table, and you have those $5 photos here, like nice photo. And people will buy them for $5 if you sign them.
Absolutely.
And that's $4.98 right into your jeans. That's the best thing that you can sell, and everybody will buy it because it's cheap.
Right, and it's figuring out other ways just to generate revenue.
Momentum too. Like it's a great momentum too, because they can personalize it to whomever, all that type of stuff. So it builds that connection with the fan, and gives them a cheap momentum. Because not everybody's got like an extra $30 because they probably drank it.
Right. Yeah.
So, but they may scrape together $5, right?
Right.
Cool. What did you find most challenging when you were coming up?
The most challenging was navigating the internal components of a record label. Because all it took around the conference table was one person to go, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And here you are, you're sitting in a conference, you're playing records, and you're playing a new single. Everyone's jumping up and down, and then just one asshole says, I don't know. It's like, I don't know if it's there yet. Maybe we should get so-and-so in to do a remix on it or something. It's
and most of the time, the people around the table don't have a musical bone in their body.
No, they don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. They really don't. Right?
Yeah, it's sad.
It is sad. But like I said, it's all changing now, and a lot of these record guys. In fact, Bobby Tarantino works for me now. He was a legendary record promoter back in the 80s and 90s, and he works for me now doing consulting. And he felt the same way. A lot of people just don't have a clue in the major label system. They just don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What do you think what's for you is the most challenging today, like compared to back then, trying to figure out the inner workings of a label? What is it today?
Well, I find that me going to like the lower echelon A&R guy is pointless.
Mm-hmm.
It's pointless. They just have no power. They don't cut the checks.
Yeah.
And like I said before, they want that ball at the 50-yard line.
Yeah.
So here you are, striving and struggling to get some decent streams going, some decent followers.
Yeah.
And and I'm better off calling up Monty Littman directly at Republic Records.
For sure. Yeah.
Because I made records.
Most people don't know how to do that because they don't have that connection, right? So.
Right. Yeah, but it goes back to me saying, like my network is everything, right? My ability to call up an old dear friend who hadn't heard from me in 25 years, say, hey, what are you doing? I got this thing going on,
Yeah, for sure. And, the one thing I always found about the industry is that the connections are there. Even if you haven't talked to somebody for like 5-10 years, you pick up the phone, you talk to them. It's just like you talked to them like last week.
Yeah,
right? It's
totally.
one of the very few industries where that connection always seems to be there, and nobody's pissed off because you haven't talked to them for a few years.
No,
right?
I reconnect with people all the time.
Yeah,
all the time. Dear friends from many years ago, made many a hit record for the label when they were at the major label. They remember me that way. I just reconnected with a lawyer, a friend who I hadn't spoken to in 30 years.
Yeah. Well,
hey, I've been following you on LinkedIn. I see what you're up to. You're doing great. Da, da, da. Give me a shout sometime. Great. Yeah. I love to catch up with you, man.
Yeah. No, and it's a lot of fun too.
It's fun. It's great fun.
Yeah. What would you say is one of your fondest memories of something that happened or about working in the industry?
Okay, so the greatest memory I have is when I did the Carly Simon record. This was in November, the fall of '72, right? Mm-hmm. And Mick Jagger stumbles into the studio, and we're in the studio just hanging out, and Mick and Carly are sitting down at the piano, just playing like old blues standards, old John Hendricks songs, things like that, and I'm going, holy shit, I can't believe this is happening to me, right? And then Mick goes, hey, you know what? They're mixing our live tour tapes from our 1972 tour over at Olympic Studios. Let's go. So we go downstairs, and we all pile in. So Mick, Harry Nilsson, we woke him up, carried him out. Bobby Keys, the sax player. Jimmy Price, the trumpet player. And we all ventured over to Olympic Studios. And here I am, hanging out with Mick Jagger and Andy Johns. Do you remember that name?
I certainly do, yes.
Yeah.
One
Andy
of the great
Johns
producers,
was engineering and mixing. And I'm just like looking at this cavernous studio, like this, it looks like a canyon, now that I remember back, and I go downstairs. So they're upstairs, they're smoking weed, drinking, and everyone's partying. And I'm downstairs in the studio, and I'm looking at this drum setup, big drums. And they're like 3 feet off the ground on risers. and underneath the risers, maybe 2 feet off the ground are Neumann 87s slid in underneath. There's like 6 of them all underneath this massive riser. And I'm going, oh, this is a really strange setup, right?
Yeah.
And so I go back up, and, everyone's partying and drinking. And so I go to Andy Johns. I said, yeah, that's a great drum setup. Like, what is that, He goes, Eddie Kramer's in, and he's doing a new Zeppelin album.
Yeah.
And I said, that's John Bonham's drum setup? He goes, yeah. I said, so that's how he gets that drum setup, putting those mics underneath that riser. That's how he gets that boom, right?
Yeah.
And that was like, that just impressed the shit out of me. Number one, I'm hanging out with greatness, and I'm the only one straight, right? Not drunk, not drunk, right?
That's why you're one of the few that remembers it, right?
I'm seeing an Eddie Kramer mic setup on a John Bonham drum set, and I go, oh my God, it doesn't get any better than this, man.
Yeah, and you're like what, 18, 19 years old?
I was 18.
18.
18 in May of '72. I turned 18.
And you know what? Here we are today, and you're looking back to that day, and you still remember it, and it's one of your greatest memories. Like how awesome is that, right?
Like it was done yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I remember trying to wake up Harry Nilsson. Harry, wake up! You're ready to sing. Richard comes out. He ain't singing nothing. This guy's not singing anything.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Who was the person in the industry that had the greatest impact on you, and why?
Sir George, without a doubt.
Okay. And why?
Sir George. Why? Because I could sit and talk with him for hours. I mean, he'd give me all kinds of time, right? Just to talk about music and, what he's working on or what's coming up. And, imagine sitting in a cathedral, for 2 hours waiting for the King's singers to show up.
Right.
And it's just you and George in the cathedral, right?
Nice.
What are you talking about? Yeah. So we just like, in Hebrew, we have a term called kibbutz. You want to have a little kibbutz, you have a little chat, and, just absorbing, because I'm sitting here in awe of this guy, and I was, I was the luckiest kid in the world. Lucky.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was Sir George had a tremendous impact on me, and Jeff Emmerich as well. As an engineer,
right?
He was really the guy behind all of the recording innovations on Sir George's recordings. And he's Sir George had come up with the idea, but it was Jeff who implemented the idea.
Yeah.
Technically, right?
Yeah. Cool stuff.
Yeah.
All right. One final question.
Sure.
What's the dream gig?
The dream gig. Okay, so AMG has now been branded into a music, film, and television company.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is because what we do here at AMG now is all media has melded together. Okay?
Yeah.
And so we've gone into content acquisition, putting out movies. So we did the Drake movie 5 years ago. We put out a movie on Drake. I was able to get 1,400 theaters worldwide through AMC, their music marketing division, called Spectacast.
Mm-hmm.
And we did 1,400 theaters worldwide. And I went, wow, this is a pretty cool business.
Yeah.
And now we're acquiring finished, completed movies for insertions into film, television, streaming networks, anywhere we can get it up and running. We just picked up a movie on Wang Feng. Wang Feng is like the Bruce Springsteen of China.
Right.
This guy plays to 80. This guy can go on tour across China, do 20 dates, and play to 100,000 kids a night. That's how big he is.
Yeah.
That's how big he is. You and I never heard of him, right?
Of course not.
But this guy, and he was also the judge on the China Voice.
Right.
So we picked up a live concert documentary on him because when I was talking to Tom, the director, producer, they only did a deal for China. They didn't do a deal outside of China.
Oh, I got you.
And I said, hey, why don't I pick it up for China? I got a deal, with the company. We can get it up and running. We can get it out for you and get it into all these streaming channels. So AMG is now acquiring IP for development, finding completed finished product, films, documentaries, anything that we can get our hands on to fill the void, because Netflix has created a whole new avenue of income for bands and artists for music insertions into this new fresh programming.
Right.
So it's no longer about the three networks.
Yeah.
Right? ABC, NBC, CBS, just putting out TV shows. It's about HBO,
for sure.
Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Roku, Voodoo, the works.
Yeah.
Right? So this is where everything's melding together. We have a catalog of about 4,000 songs. BMG Music owns 50% of our music publishing division now. And we continue to put music into film and TV. And that's what I do now. So I'm out looking for finished film projects. I'm also looking for projects that we can get involved in on an investment scenario in terms of putting together some investors. We're working on a documentary project right now on the murder of Jam Master Jay from Run DMC.
Right.
And that's a $500,000 documentary.
Right. Yep.
That's a low budget, but you do 4 or 5 of those and bang, you've got 4 or 5 properties out on Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Roku, the works.
Yeah. For sure.
We do deals with Spafax, which is the world's airlines. So, our content is across the Spotfax programming. Every 6 weeks, there's bang, click, new hard drive goes in with all new programming, TV shows,
right.
updated news, updated movies, stuff like that. So that's what my goal now is, to create this music, film, and television company, which we're well on the road to doing. I'm also on the board of directors for, you're going to like this, for the International Guitar Players Hall of Fame in Cooperstown.
Cool.
So this is a brand new project. We've acquired a building right next to the Baseball Hall of Fame, about 2 blocks away.
Right.
And in this building, we just got the architecture renderings in late last week. We're going to put in Guitar Players Hall of Fame. So
long overdue.
Long overdue. So we're putting all this together right now. It's a fascinating project. I'm out pounding on doors on Wall Street and raising money for the project. It's up in Cooperstown. It's a great area. We've got the Singer sewing family to do a dollar for dollar raise. So if we raise $10 million, she'll kick in $10 million.
Fantastic.
And it's a great project getting it.
Yeah, that's
running.
An awesome project. Yeah.
And we're going to have every major guitar player, from bossa nova to jazz to bluegrass, to banjo. It's going to be a really well-rounded, museum for the guitar player, which is, like you said, long overdue. These guys aren't recognized. But hey, you know what we'll do? We'll say, hey, Eric Clapton, can we use that guitar that you did that solo on Layla? Can we put that into the museum? Can we borrow it for 2 years and just put it in the museum?
Oh, for sure.
And do an interactive thing, where Eric is actually talking about the solo on Layla, and it's going to be amazing.
It's going to be cool. Yeah, fantastic.
And that's a priority project right now. We just put the deal together.
Any idea when it's expected to open?
Depending on the raise, we're doing a Reg A raise, and depending on the raise, we're looking at maybe pushing it next summer. Obviously, next summer in Cooperstown is very, very active, not only with the Baseball Hall of Fame, but there's 28 baseball diamonds, baseball camps in Cooperstown.
Yeah.
So mom and dad brings Tommy and Sally up to the baseball. They do the summer camps, and while they're at summer camp all day, mom and dad are walking around,
looking for something to do.
Looking for something to do, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to put a little restaurant in it. It's going to be a museum.
Yeah.
We're active. I'll buy some schmata, some T-shirts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
what a great idea. Yeah, long overdue. Happy to hear about that one. You're right.
Yeah. I'll shoot you the architectural drawings.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'd love to see them. Well, Mark, it's been a real pleasure, my friend.
Absolutely, man.
We've had many great conversations over the years.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that we've got the chance to record this one so we can share your wisdom and your legacy with a lot of people.
Totally my pleasure, man. I enjoy it.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. To get a hold of Mark Berry, damgcorp.com is the website, correct?
Yeah.
DAMG.
TheAMGCorp.com.
Twitter.
And we're all on a first name basis, so just Mark.
Yeah, and Mark's on Twitter as well at MarkBerryAMG.
Yep.
And on Instagram as well at TheAMGCorp.
Yeah.
Those are all good. And our friend McNichol, his is McNicholmusic.com, right?
That's correct.
And McNichol is McNicoll.
Correct.
Correct. Fantastic. Well, Mark, thank you very much for coming on. Let's do this again in a few years. And
absolutely.
For everybody else, thanks for listening, and see you on the flip side.